Well, we knew it was coming. I told you that in my last video about the right wing's outrage in reaction to the Derek Chovian verdict, which was voted guilty on all counts. We talked about Tucker Carlson yesterday, but now it's just gotten completely out of control. Now I'm going to read you some Twitter tweets and show you a couple of video clips that pretty much illustrate how incredibly stupid the right wing has become. This one from white supremacist defender Tim Pool. Cops need to resign en masses now. I know he meant en masse, but seriously, you can't even spell en masse? Don't use the word if you don't know how to spell it. And this from Steven Crowder, another right-wing pundit, saying, of course this was going to be a pivot. Expect more police to quit in the coming weeks. About those two tweets, you're expecting cops to quit because one of them was convicted of a crime he committed? Seriously? What exactly is their whole rationale about that? Is the simple fact that they believe that cops can't be criminals anymore, that cops can't go out of control, that cops can't kill black people en masse. You know the word en masse. That they can't kill black people with impunity. And what really bothers me about that is that if you can't do your job without trying to act like you're Judge Dredd or Dirty Harry or anything else like that, then you have no business being a police officer. But it just gets worse. We got an old friend that I'd like to reintroduce to you all, Tommy, whatever the freak your name is. Anyway, Tommy Lauren, the resident racist on Fox News, now on Fox News, says, is the Foot Locker, excuse me, I gotta get my voice ready. Is the Foot Locker safe tonight? Should be, right? Justice, right? No need to steal the name of George Floyd anymore, right? You racist bitch. Man, oh man, oh man, oh man. It gets me that the right wingers would actually act like this because the fact that a cop was convicted of a crime. Had this been a black man, not just even a police officer, just a black man, they would say, hang him. They would say, throw him stone side to the prison. That's what really bothers me about this. A cop got what he deserved in court. Now, the appeals is probably going to go through. Matter of fact, let's talk about that real quick. What I'm about to show you is a video clip of another clown who says that the George Floyd case, that he deserves to go free because of political pressure. That Derek Chovian deserves to this conviction should be overturned because of political pressure. Take a look at this.
Hours after the judge in the case reprimanded Maxine Waters, who flew from D.C. to the city before the jury had started deliberating to demand a guilty verdict. In fact, she demanded a verdict on premeditated murder, which she wasn't even charged with. And first of all, that whole Maxine Waters going to Minneapolis, what else could that be other than an attempt to intimidate and tamper with the jury? What other motivation could you have to fly as a high-ranking politician to the city where this local murder trial is happening and demand that the jury come to a verdict? Either you believe in fair trials or you don't. Either you want the jury to weigh the evidence and come to a decision or you don't. It's clear that they don't here. The problem, the irony is that the only verdict we could really trust is an acquittal on all counts. I think that would have been the right verdict, but it's also the only one you can trust because it's the only one that couldn't have been motivated by anything but a look at the evidence. But with this verdict, you have to obviously wonder, is that how they saw it when they investigated the evidence, or are they coming to this decision because they know their lives might be over, might be ruined if they came to any other decision. They know that the media is going to leak their identity, and they're going to be looking over their shoulder for the rest of their lives.
Right, they had a choice. They could be the heroes of the Republic today, or they could be the greatest villains in the history of the Republic today.
About that, so the only verdict we could trust is an acquittal. Not because that the evidence supports an acquittal, but because the jury, speaking of, the jury was pushed into this by Maxine Waters. And about that, I've been hearing from Facebook in the last 24 hours, since this verdict came down, that people have been saying on Facebook and Twitter that these jurors were actually threatened with their lives if they didn't vote guilty. And I keep asking these people who are saying this for evidence of those threats. And to this point, not one person has given me any kind of clear evidence of threats against the jury. Because if there were threats against the jury members, that jury member that was threatened would definitely go to the cops. Especially if they wanted to, especially if they wanted to vote an acquittal for Derek Chovian. So they're full of shit, obviously. But I'm wondering, but this brings up a very interesting point to me. After the O.J. Simpson trial, I remember the jury members giving interviews. I mean, at least years afterward, after finding out that the trial was over, they were threatened. They were called every name in the book. They were accused of only laying O.J. Simpson off because he was black. You got no problem? So you got a problem with O.J. Simpson getting off because he's black, but you don't have a problem. But now, anyway, the whole point I'm trying to say is this. You're full of shit. The only verdict we could trust is an acquittal? How about the fact that the prosecution proved its case over the defense, whose case was shit? It was all shit. How about the fact that the video that's been played over and over and over and over and over and over and over again by both the defense and the prosecution, how about that fact? Where we see over and over again George Floyd murder step by step. And the defense is the one who gave them the step by step in his closing arguments. Now, you want to argue that Maxine Waters did was inappropriate? Fine. I think it was inappropriate too. However, that's not the end all and be all of it. Because the evidence pointed directly at Chovian, and the evidence showed that Chovian was guilty and he is going to jail for it. It's amazing to me how people who hate people like George Floyd, who actually want to see justice done, it's amazing to me how they make up these amazing stories, this conspiracy narrative that it was all rigged against Chovian. How about the fact that the evidence pointed at him? And unfortunately, in this last tweet, the president was not spirited too. Ben Shapiro, the guy who fights for the little guy, he says this: "It is fully insane that the President of the United States seeks to address the nation in the aftermath of individual criminal justice cases, but this is the new normal. It has been since Ferguson." So, you have a problem with the President of the United States addressing something that should have been addressed a year ago. You have a problem with the President of the United States addressing something that your man Donald Trump ignored and made completely worse until it was the riots and the looting and the burning. Shapiro, go to hell, you bastard. And it's not the only person I have a problem with. The former press whore, Kayleigh McEnany, had to say this on Fox. So President Biden shouldn't intense flames in a situation like this, like Trump did. I must be suffering from amnesia, because wasn't it Donald Trump who called NFL football players sons of bitches, demanding that they be fired for peacefully protesting against something like this, something like what Derek Chovian did?
See one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of a bitch off the field right now, out, he's fired. He's fired!
I must be fouled up in the head. Wasn't it Trump who gassed peaceful protesters outside the gate of the White House so we can have this photo op, this photo? Oh my God. You know what? It just shows me that the right wing is just angry, just fuming that a cop was convicted of murder. That cop actually committed murder, and he is now getting exactly what he deserves for it. Now, again, he may get, he may actually get appeals for it. It might be overturned. But frankly, I don't see how. The evidence is overwhelming. And as for the jury threats and everything, and as for Maxine Waters, all that is just pink smoke. It's bullshit. Your boy committed a murder, and he's paying the price. And need us all remind you, he is the first. There's going to be a tidal wave coming. When cops cross the line, they're going to get punished. Your time of getting away with crimes is over. OVER, over. And people like Ben Shapiro and Tommy Lahren can cry, can bitch, can piss all they want. But in the end of the day, the cops follow the law, or you pack your bags. That's the way it is, ladies and gentlemen. We are a country of laws. And those laws must bind everyone, high and low, especially the people who are supposed to be enforcing the law. Derek Chovian, as I said before, is the first. There's going to be more. Bank on it. And that's for you right-wingers and idiotic Trumpers that want to scream, huff, and holler every time a cop gets convicted of a crime he committed. Let me ask you something. Is it really worth labeling you and putting yourself as a racist bastard? Or are you going to stand up for the things you say you stand up for? Your choice. The second thing I want to talk about quickly is, of course, the shooting that happened in Columbus, Ohio. Now, I watched the video front to back. It doesn't look good. It's not good at all. This could be labeled as a justified shooting. I have no problem saying that, but I will say this. The cop couldn't wrestle the knife away from her. He's a full-grown man. She's a 16-year-old girl. The cop couldn't fire in the air, stall her, scare her to death. Even in the extreme of circumstances, she couldn't shoot for the arm or the leg. She's dead. Now, he may not be charged with this thing. And honestly, as I said before, and earlier in this year, it may be in policy. We have to accept that fact, because the video is showing us that she attacked someone else. However, there were other alternatives this cop could have done. And it just shows us that we're living in two Americas. Right now, at the end of this video, I want to read you something else from John Pavlovitz. The fact that we are living in two Americas and neither one can do. Take a listen to this. We saw two Americas in a single day. As Officer Derek Chovian's fate was being decided in the court or jury in the Minneapolis courtroom, Columbus, Ohio police were deciding the 16-year-old Ma'Khia Bryant's fate in the front of her house. Unlike him, for her there was no careful deliberation, no meticulous proceeding of information, no measured or somber judgment, no beyond a shadow of a doubt certainty, no prolonged time of waiting, only immediate death sentence. Just as the news of Chovian's conviction had begun to sweep through our nation, offering Americans of color and their supporters a rare moment of anything resembling personal accountability for the murder of a black man by police, what seemed like an incremental bend of the moral arc of the universe toward justice, police officers in Columbus told us not to get used to that. It was another breathtaking reminder of what normal in this country for people like Chovian and people like Bryant, lest we forget it for a second. The former's penalty is a rarity, the latter's execution far more commonplace. There are still two very different Americas at work, and we need to reckon with that. Today, the pundits will assemble, the politicians will proliferate, the preachers will sermonize, and a flood of think pieces will careen into our timelines and onto our screens, debating the multitudinous hows, whys of fixing this collective brokenness. But the answer is rather simple. Officers need to stop killing people of color. That's it. At least that's the beginning. This prolific violence isn't fundamental about funding or training or a broken system needing repair or national reckoning white privilege of white supremacy. But at its core, this is about the collective heart sickness that so dehumanizes black and brown human beings in the eyes of law enforcement that allows them to act in haste and with recklessness and without hesitation because they believe no accountability will come to them because it so rarely has. Two Americas were revealed in their stories. From the moment he slowly and deliberately murdered George Floyd in the street in May of 2020, Derek Chovian received every benefit of an American designed to protect people like him. A heavily redacted initial police report, stayed political resistance to charges even being filed, fierce legal representation, and a small army of conservative white Americans who repeatedly assassinated Floyd's character post-mortem and tried to make a nation believe a white officer over their own eyes. In a few minutes, Ma'Khia Bryant received what young people of color have so often received since America's inception: total disregard by those charged with protecting her, those she trusted to keep her safe, and now in the aftermath of their failure, the sovereign partisan television hosts and neighborhood bigots who will engage in the wildest intellectual gymnastics and desperate story spin in order to make this radiant, fully alive 16-year-old honor student somehow responsible for her own termination. Two nations are not sustainable and should not be acceptable for us. People of color have all long known that there existed two different Americas and that they've been trying to tell the rest of us. They have been whitewashed, stars and stripes, fireworks, fantasy of song and anthems and history books. One that does its best to erase the contributions of black and brown people and share the sins of those who have built and sustained ourselves at their expense. the mythical notion of MAGA nostalgia pines and fights for. And there is a 244-year reality of a bigotry and brutality that has been largely unabated because those who have wielded power have made sure of it. The violence that hasn't been documented in HD video and shoved in front of us, demanding that we not look away, the place where justice has so rarely visited. The rarity of two Americas isn't in question anymore for those who are willing to pay attention. The only question for people of faith, morality, and conscience here now is, which America will we feed and which one will we let starve to death? With our time, our words, and our work, and our resources, and our votes. I want to contribute to the making a nation where the murderous, racist cops are terrified and buoyant young black girls are empowered. Because the reverse is isn't something worthy of my time and is not worthy of Ma'Khia Bryant or Dante Wright or George Floyd or Breonna Taylor. The list goes on. Two Americas, especially ones this divergent, are simply one too many. Choose the nation you want to live in and make it. CTP, know the truth. God bless. Peace to the left, justice to the right.